First speakers, I should say, are Tamara, Tinkham, and Jill Fisher. And what I would also, when you come, if you could state your name and address for our record, that would be helpful.
Sure. My name is Tamara Tinkham.
Welcome.
And I'm at 4815 Lilac Place. And I just want to take a second of my time to say congratulations to these skiers. My son, Jamie, skied with them. He was a 7th grader. And they were just incredible mentors to the younger kids. And I just want to share that piece. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'd like to talk about dyslexia. I am one of the many faces of dyslexia. I have a father who struggled to read in the 1950s, a daughter diagnosed with dyslexia, and I was diagnosed in the 80s at Groves Academy. In many ways, the 3 generations of my family had very similar experiences in school. Not many people knew much about dyslexia or how to help us. We all grew up with fantastic books that covered nearly every square foot of our houses. My grandparents were told in about 5th grade that my father was a hopeless case. Those were the words. And then 30 years later, my 6th grade teacher told my parents that I would never, ever be college material. I've worked hard to shield my daughter from this type of discrimination. However, it still exists, and this is still painful to the parents who receive these kinds of messages. One of the serious issues my daughter has, which is very typical of dyslexics, is a significant deficit in short-term memory for things that don't have meaning. So think of phone numbers, multiplication facts, names and dates. Giving a dyslexic an exam like this only tests her disability and has little correlation with whether she can make use of the material to solve real-world problems. A good example is my notorious poor spelling. I could stare at a word for hours on a flashcard, and then spell check might still not know what I'm trying to say. But I can remember the minute details of a patient's story in my therapy practice, and I can remember every piece of another parent's story about going through the same struggle. Dyslexia was first identified in 1887 and was called word blindness. A system for teaching dyslexic students to read was developed by Sam Orton in the late 1920s. Research using brain scans over the last 15 years has demonstrated clear differences in the brains of dyslexics, and specifically in the way children with dyslexia learn to read. We really do not have a knowledge gap on dyslexia so much as we have an action gap. Schools that are serious about equity and closing the achievement gap need to implement the known strategies that teach all kids to read. Those of us armed with the knowledge and financial means spend thousands and thousands of dollars to first have our children assessed and then to teach our children to read through private tutors and private camps and private schools. These are the children who will do fine. They'll go on to be the success stories we all love to talk about. If you think about Jamie Oliver, Richard Branson, Anne Bancroft, Bill Gates, JFK, and Whoopi Goldberg, to name a few. Families who must rely solely on the public schools to teach their dyslexic children often get left behind, or worse. There are several states in our country that use data from their 3rd graders' reading tests in order to predict capacity needs for their prisons. It is estimated that over 80% of juvenile offenders have a reading disability, the most common by far being dyslexia. Kids who do not get the correct instruction are too often anxious, depressed, or very angry. What would life be like for all of these kids if they'd been taught explicitly to read the symbols on the page? We can't let dyslexia continue to be a diagnosis of privilege. All schools, but most importantly our schools, need everyone to understand the brain science of dyslexia and put in place the best evidence-based practices available. 15 to 20% of our population is dyslexic, and these students, regardless of their financial means, deserve to be taught in the ways that work. Please make sure a qualified dyslexia specialist's voice is heard in the crucial decisions we make in the Stillwater schools.
Thank you very much.